The meeting is now open. A very good morning to one and all. Welcome to the fourth session of LAM, the Legal Awareness and Motivation Program, brought to you by CG3 Connecting Governing and Governance. Today we explore the topic, Be Thou Ever High, Law is Above You. Before we begin, I request all the participants to kindly mute the electronic devices used for joining the meeting, and I seek your utmost cooperation throughout the program. Today's LAMP session is exclusively dedicated for the vibrant students of Greets Public School, Kallur, who have joined us along with their dear teachers and parents. So let us begin the session by invoking the blessings of God Almighty, and I invite Ms. Adrina Carmel Thomas to render the prayer song.
Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Thou art the potter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me after thy will. While I am waiting, yielded and still. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Search me and try me, Master, today. Whiter than snow, Lord, wash me just now. As in thy presence, humbly I bow.
CG3 is honored to have an edifying panel of legal luminaries, all set to enrich and inspire each of us with their wise words of intellect. So without any further ado, let us commence today's session, and I invite Ms. Mary Ann Shaiju, a student of Greets Public School, to deliver the welcome address.
A very bright and good morning to one and all. Respected dignitaries, eminent personalities of CG3, Principal Jaya Saban, Vice Principal Belinda Vivera, and dear fellow students. On behalf of Greets Public School, it is my pleasure and privilege to deliver this welcome address. CG3 is a collective organization which was established primarily with the intention to give meaning to justice by providing ease and access to the deprived and aims to bridge the gap between governed, governing, and governors. As a part of this awareness session, a legal awareness and motivation speech is being conducted under the title, Be Thou Ever High, Law is Above You. His Lordship, Mr. Justice P.V. Ravindran, was elevated from bar to bench and after a successful stint as Kerala High Court judge, has retired from service in 2018. Sir, I welcome you to this meeting wholeheartedly. We look forward to your keynote address. Dr. K.P. Kailasnatha Pillai, mentor to CG3, is a senior advocate at Supreme Court of India. With his grasp of legal awareness and the practical acumen, his opening words for this session is a much anticipated one. Sir, I welcome you to this session.
Thank you.
Advocate Ajay Verma, a practicing lawyer at the Honorable Supreme Court of India, was kind enough to deliver the special motivation speech for this session. On behalf of the school as well as our students, we extend our hearty welcome to you, sir. Ms. Ratika Sudhir, student at Symbiosis Law School, have joined with us today to say a few words on choosing legal profession and also to express the vote of thanks. Welcome, Ms. Radhika. Last but not the least, I welcome the faculty and dear students to this session. May this be a legally enriching and motivating session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Mary, and I welcome you to this event as well. Now I invite our mentor, Dr. K.P. Kailasnatha Pillai, Senior Advocate at Honorable Supreme Court of India, to deliver the introductory address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Advocate Gayatri. A very good morning to all. Honorable Mr. Justice P.N. Ravindran sir, Advocate Ajay Verma, Andrina Carmel Thomas, who sang the prayer so melodiously, Mary Ann, a very resourceful welcome, Radhika, who has come to deliver the vote of thanks and her personal experiences, the bright and excellent students of Greece Public School, the teachers, principal, vice principal, parents, and all of this. It is really a jubilant occasion for CG3 as we are addressing the students of one of the most attractively performing in Kerala generally, and Greece Public School is always an attraction of the public in Ernakulam. I have most often heard about the standards of discipline and academic matters maintained by the school, and I thank the authorities of the school for affording an opportunity to CG3 for holding this session of LAM in the cloisters of this great institution. About CG3, Mary Ann mentioned a little, and Advocate Gayatri also mentioned. I'm not going to dilate on it. It is a collective of lawyers, law teachers, persons from other professions who put their heads together to form this organization. We intend to make it an intellectual hub, an academic hub with the dimensions of social service, legal literacy. We have been getting good encouragement from the public, encouragement from and patronage from esteemed personalities like Justice Ravindran and other judges, as well as public men from the government also. And I'm not, and regarding the program of LAM, Legal Awareness and Motivation Program, we are focusing in schools, because in schools, systematic study of law is not there, even though now CBSE has introduced a legal paper that is there, fortunately, and I'm happy to learn that it is here in Greece Public School also, very well and good. Because knowing basic laws, principles of law, the do's and don'ts at a young age will help you groom your character, your conduct, your behavior in a better manner than remaining ignorant of law till you accidentally join for a legal profession or till you get involved in a court case or some controversy. So when you reach your higher studies after 12th standard for joining for medicine, engineering, accountancy, chartered accountancy, and so many other courses, already you might have had sufficient schooling on the subjects like chemistry, biology, mathematics, English, but there is no law prescribed in the curriculum holding a prominent position. So our endeavor is to create an atmosphere and ecosystem for legal studies also in the school, and in the course of which raising awareness among the students community. So we are not leaving after conducting this LAM. Any student, any parent, any teacher can contact CG3, and students not directly but through their principal or their teachers. They can contact if any doubts, any queries, any suggestions, any advices required. So this will be a continuous affair. And the topic today, be the ever high, the law is above you, shows the importance of rule of law, mandatory requirement of knowing basic principles of law. Even if you are the Prime Minister of this country, President of this country, the law is above that the persons who are occupying those positions. Our Supreme Court had occasion to demonstrate it when a Prime Minister passed a law in the Parliament that election of Prime Minister, President, Vice President, and Speaker of the Legislature of the Parliament cannot be questioned in any court of law. So that was struck down by Supreme Court, telling that you may be high, be the ever high, the law is above you. So these are the lessons which we have to learn in life, for practicing in life. I am concluding my words. There are eminent persons to give you advice. Their wisdom you can share. Justice P.N. Ravindran is a no-nonsense judge of the Kerala High Court. He was a judge of the Kerala High Court. I have a personal intimate friendship or knowledge of his lordship's conduct at the bar as a lawyer and as a judge, a very productive judge, a very strict judge also. He means business while being at the bench or as a lawyer. It is our good fortune that we have a personality like Justice P.N. Ravindran in the midst of us to address us. Then Advocate Ajay Verma is a dynamic lawyer of the Supreme Court. He has an association with CG3, as well as he is an active member of several human rights organizations like Bridges to Justice and other organizations. He has specialized in the rights of human rights of prisoners and prison rights. And Ajay Verma is a very active protagonist of human rights. And I think Ajay's words of wisdom will definitely attract you and impress you. Now we have Radhika here. Radhika is a student of law in the 5th semester in Symbiosis College Law School in Pune. She's an active member of CG3 and she has her own vision and she will share a piece of her mind before delivers the vote of thanks. We have a good audience here and I know that the efforts taken by CG3 with the help of the distinguished personalities here and the patronage of the school authorities and the involvement and attention of the student community will bear fruits. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you, sir, for making a beautiful start to this session. Let us now enjoy the true spirit of each member behind CG3. So here we are presenting CG3's theme song.
പക്ഷത്തൊരുക്കുവാൻ CG3 നീതിയും നിയമവും ജനപക്ഷത്തൊരുക്കുവാൻ CG3 നിശബ്ദ ഖണ്ഡങ്ങളിൽ ശബ്ദമായി നീതി ന്യായത്തിൻ ബോധമുണർത്താൻ CG3 പ്രകാശനത്തിൽ പരിഹരിച്ചിടാം 100,000 ആളിൽ നീറും ദുരിതങ്ങൾ ഹൃദയപ്രകാശനത്തിൽ പരിഹരിച്ചിടാം 100,000 ആളിൽ നീറും ദുരിതങ്ങൾ. മനുഷ്യത്വ നിറച്ചു നാം മുന്നോട്ടായ നമുക്കീ കൂട്ടായ്മയിൽ സത്യശീലവും ധർമ്മബോധവും കരുത്താകുമീ CG3. നീതിയും നിയമവും ജനപക്ഷത്തൊരുക്കുവാൻ CG3. നിശബ്ദ കണ്ഠങ്ങളിൽ ശബ്ദമായി നീതി ന്യായത്തിൻ ബോധമുണർത്താൻ CG3. CG3.
Now it is indeed my honor to invite our esteemed guest, Honorable Mr. Justice P.N. Ravindran, former Judge, High Court of Kerala, to deliver the keynote address. Over to you, sir.
Respected elders, Dr. Kailash Pillai, Sri Ajay Verma, Ms. Radhika Sudhir, Ms. Gayatri, Ms. Marianu welcomed all of us, and all the parents, students, teachers, and staff of Greets Public School. A very good morning to you all. I never thought that I'll be addressing about 288 persons today morning. Day before yesterday, Mr. Pillai called me up and said I should participate in this program. I said yes, without little realizing the dangers attached to it. I was not aware of the previous conferences held by CG3. Great luminaries, Mr. Subramania Swamy and others, they have spoken. And it's a great honor to be associated with such an organization. Anyway, thanks for inviting me, Mr. Pillai, and thanks for listening to me in the morning when you have better things to do. Thank you. Now, it's quite often said that ignorance of law is not an excuse. But there is no presumption that every person knows the law. It would be contrary to common sense if one were to take it to the logical conclusion. It's quite often said that ignorance of law is not an excuse. The consequences of illegal consequences of your actions, you cannot explain away by saying I was not aware that it's an offense. I was not aware that I had broken the law. That to that extent only the law has application. But when it comes to exemptions, these principles don't operate. The fact that you are unaware that you are exempted, it's not a reason to convict you. Right? Now we are all passing through testing times. COVID-19 pandemic has devastated us, except those who draw a monthly pension like me and the salaried people in the public sector. I mean, including the government and the public sector undertakings. The livelihood of everyone else has been affected. I know for certain that many lawyers have left Delhi. They have abandoned their offices. In the sense, they have given up their rented premises where they were having an independent office. They have confined their practices to their home office. They have shifted their offices to their homes. It has affected a lot of persons. Everyone is emotionally upset. Tempers are short. And at the slightest provocation, one's act may lead him to face the law, him or her to face the law. So all the more the reason why during these present times, every citizen should be aware of the consequences of his act. I am not saying you should study the laws by heart, no. We have certain fundamental rights. We should be aware of that. I am sure all of you would have heard about a recent incident in Kerala which happened when a girl witnessed the police misbehaving to a man who had come to an ATM to take money from a cooperative bank. I'm not saying the police, you should point fingers at the police, no, or you should attack them, no. But then you must stand your ground. You must be aware of your fundamental rights. Police cannot simply ride roughshod over the rights of all of us. They're doing a wonderful job, no doubt. But as in every sector of the society, among policemen also there are bad people. There are bad engineers, bad lawyers, bad doctors, bad teachers, bad students, bad parents. In every cross-section of the society, there are people who are not good. So, but then you can't judge the community by their standards. So unless you are aware of your rights, that girl was aware of her rights, you cannot assert your fundamental rights. We have fundamental duties also, we quite often forget about it. Now, as a lawyer, I've been a lawyer since 1979 and a judge for a short period of 10.5 years. Now I am back to the profession. It's a very thrilling profession, very challenging. And if you are devoted to the profession, the sky is the limit. Mr. Pillai will certainly be able to, and Mr. Ajay Verma will be able to throw light on those subjects. Now, as a lawyer, I have found that the persons who come to meet and discuss with you, they are quite unaware of their rights. Even today, people who face the slightest and simplest of problems, the slightest of problems, like a quarrelsome neighbor, they don't know what to do. I said, you please go to the nearest lawyer available, talk to him. He may be able to console you and bring about a settlement. He may be able to advise you properly. People are not even prepared to understand the basics of law. What are your rights as a citizen? You must, I would, in my humble opinion, venture to suggest that all of us, apart from everything else, as we are passing through a stage where the police have a role in controlling every aspect of human behavior. Every human endeavor is now regulated by laws. And the law enforcement agency is the police. So that we have to be aware of what are the rights of the police, what are their duties and obligations. I would humbly request all of you to please get a copy of the Police Act. 1 minute, my cook has come, I have to open the door for her. Please excuse me for a moment, please. I'm in the second floor. Unless I open the door, I won't get breakfast till lunch. No, I was saying that you please get a copy of the Kerala Police Act. Go through it. Find out, it sets out the rights of the citizen, rights of the police also. When something happens on the road, you have a right to photograph that if a policeman is involved. There are provisions relating to that, but how many of us know that? Even I was not aware of it till recently. I had occasion to go through it. So that I would say parents, college, school and college authorities should on their own, even without the CBSE or any other educational agency interfering, make it a point to educate the children about their rights, about their obligations, and also their fundamental duties. So that it's a very, very great thing that CG3 is doing. Many of us, even a week back, my son called me up and said, one of his friends has a problem. What is to be done? I said, ask him to go and consult a lawyer. Don't do anything without consulting a lawyer. I am not encouraging litigation. Don't take a step further in your decision-making process involving the rights of others without consulting a lawyer. You want to write a will? Okay, fine, go and meet a lawyer. Don't do it on your own. You want to convey property? Please meet a lawyer and discuss with him before you go to a document writer or a scribe. So that somehow people have an aversion to meeting lawyers. I don't know why. There was even an aversion to renting out homes to lawyers about 20, 30 years back. Oh, lawyers are the cream of the society. It's the only profession which is referred to in the Constitution of India. Teaching is the most noble, but the Constitution of India doesn't refer to teachers. It refers to the only profession it refers to is the lawyer's profession. Article 21. So that the law has got a great impact on our activities. It affects it controls and regulates our day-to-day life. You may say that I have a fundamental right, I have a right to privacy, but then to what extent does your fundamental right extend? To what extent does your right to privacy extend? Those things you must be aware of, the basics. I'm not saying you should study the laws by heart. It's very difficult. Even I don't know, after 40 years, I don't know what types of laws are there in existence in India. Forget the word. So it's only when you have occasion to deal with it that you come across the real statutory provisions. Generally, lawyers are trained in law in the sense they know where to look for the law and what to look for. That's the only difference between the lawyer and the layman. The lawyers know where to look for and what to look for. The others don't know. But then we also have the license to practice. As we are enrolled as lawyers, we have the right to appear in courts. So that it's a great thing that Mr. Kailas Pillai and his team are doing. And all of us are now familiar with WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all that. How many of you are aware that simply forwarding a message can land you in trouble under the Information Technology Act? So please, I would say that having regard to the present day norms, so Pillai should take it up on himself. The task of having a lecture on the intricacies of the Information Technology Act. By simply passing on an offensive message, you may end up in jail. And courts are very strict because it violates the privacy of another, and it also spreads nowadays communal hatred. A call for rebellion. You may be innocently passing on a message, but then that message would have originated from somebody who is not a worthy citizen. So that those things, the tendency to simply forward messages, I would say, now that there is an opportunity coming from a man aged 60, 65 years, please resist the temptation to forward messages. Find out whether they are genuine or fake. Even assuming they are genuine, please resist the urgency, the tendency to forward messages to others. It may end you in trouble. And don't lend your mobile phones and IT platforms to others. Persons whom you don't really know and trust can also land you in trouble. These are the complications attached to the present day developments in science and technology. It's not like somebody writing something offensive on your wall. You can always say, I did not let it out. My wall was open. It was on the other side facing the road. Somebody wrote something there. No, that excuse may not be available to you if somebody sends a message, an offensive message from your mobile phone, because you are handing it over to him or her with a belief that he may be using, you may not be using it for for committing any offense or violating the rights of others. But then if somebody else does it, you are the person responsible. You could have prevented, you could have desisted from handing over the phone, but then that's not comparable to somebody writing something offensive on the wall. I'm only giving bare minimum examples. Mr. Ajay Verma will be in a better position to explain it. He'll be able to motivate you more because he's a young lawyer and he has been in the profession throughout. I was away for about 10.5 years. I am now only back to the profession. But that 10.5 years is a great gap. It's a big gap. Being a lawyer, I would say, is much better than being a judge. Because though a judge sees both sides of the picture, it's the lawyer who actually guides the judge and makes him take an appropriate and correct decision. With these kind words, I would request Mr. Pillai to excuse me and pass on the baton to Mr. Ajay Verma for what would be a really special motivation address. And also, thereafter, to Ms. Radhika Sudhir.
Thank you, sir.
Please take it from me that every little thing that you do today may hurt the feeling of somebody else. It may end you in trouble. So please resist the urge to tweet unnecessarily, to pass on and forward messages which you have received from unknown sources, and learn to respect the rights of others. Now, my days in the colleges and schools, eve teasing was not considered an offense. It was part of our daily life. Nobody used to take it seriously, but now we have come to a stage where every little act, even innocent gesture, pranks, P-R-A-N-K, in the social media, you would have come across pranks, especially in the Eastern, the Orient, actually. In Thailand, Korea, and all that, they do a lot of pranks, even in European cities also. But if somebody were to do something like that in India, you would be certainly behind the bars for at least 6 months. So those things are there. Resist the urge. Don't merely hate the Westerners. Our culture, our civilization was the best, is the best. Take advantage of all the technological advances. But the concept of family that we Indians know and understand and experience is something alien to every other world. whether it be the East or the West, or the Middle East, or the two poles. The concept of family that we Indians know is something unique. It is not there in any other society. You have a right by birth in India. In America, you don't have. The most advanced nation in the world, you don't have a right by birth. You are not, and your parents can do whatever they want to do with their property. And once you are 15 or 16, you're on your own. I'm not saying nobody supports it, but then our parents take it. They go to great lengths. They take great pains to educate us. We were 6. My parents had 6 children. I'm the eldest. Both of them were teachers. And do you know, my parents' salary was 30 rupees a month. Gold was even costlier those days. But they took efforts. They took pains to give education to us. They educated me up to the law college. And then a budding lawyer, it's very difficult for him. They supported me for the first 5 years. I'm sure the parents nowadays are also doing the same thing. They go to great lengths. They undertake so many great sacrifices to see that their son or daughter is an engineer or a lawyer or a doctor or a scientist or a pilot. They spend love and affection and tons of money, all of us. So family first should be the motto. If that is taken as a basis, I am sure you need not study the law. You need not be aware of any law in the world. Your parents, your father and mother and grandparents certainly take you through the right path. So if my opinion, my suggestion is, if you're a good family, if you're a close-knit family and family tie and pay and value family relations, then you need not be aware of any law, because you are not going to go astray. You will go only according to the morals which they teach you. And there is no better moral than what comes from your parents. So in family matters, I would say be a bit selfish. Family first. Irrespective of whether your parents are good or bad, your siblings are good or bad, family first. That will save you from a lot of trouble. If you're good to your family, you'll be good to others also. Good to teachers, good to your fellow students. And you must have all heard of bullying in American schools. It's there in Indian schools also, though not to that extent. And I would wind up by saying, we are fortunate that we are not a society where we have a fundamental right to bear arms, as in USA. Gun violence is quite common. And even yesterday, there was a shootout in New York. Whether it is true or not, nobody knows. But then the Indian culture being what it is, our forefathers thought that it should not be there in the Constitution. If that had been there, many of us would not be alive today. We would have fallen prey to the violent thoughts and deeds of our fellow citizens. With this, I conclude. Wish you all the best. Thank you for listening to me patiently on an empty stomach. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for gracing the occasion with those wise words of wisdom. It is indeed an honor for all of us to have you with us today. Now, I'm profusely elated to invite Sri Ajay Verma, advocate practicing at the Honorable Supreme Court of India, to inspire all of us with his words of motivation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. I'm thankful to Honorable Justice Ravindran, who has given certain ideas to the youth that all of you are not to be lawyer, but you should have a basic understanding of what is happening around you. As a youth, as a student, you simply just not pass the class, go to the another class, and just do in your subjects, physics, chemistry, mathematics, or all other subjects. But you should also know the basics of what is happening around you. And if you can see that the topic today is be thou ever high, law is above you. But suppose what happens to that the people on top try to violate your rights, what you can do? What are the remedies? So these are certain discussion I would be having today. Again, I thankful to Mr. Pillai sir for giving me this opportunity, and I have prepared a little presentation to be shared with you. So the idea is not to give a legal lecture. I don't want to give a legal lecture. All of you are students and you would like to know what is Mr. Verma is saying is going above our head. No, I would like a basic, simple language that you should know what is happening around you. What is the basic human rights in international platforms and in the national frameworks has talked about. So according to the UNO, United Nations Organization, as all of you might have studied, and that the rights inherent to all human beings, regardless of race, sex, nationality, ethnicity, language, religion, or any other status. So everybody will have a right. Human rights are entitled to everyone without any form of discrimination. These are rights are guarantee rights and freedom, including the right to life and liberty, freedom from slavery and torture, freedom of expression, and the right to education and right to work. I will elaborate in my coming slides about this. So UN has created a comprehensive body of Universal Human Rights Law. Most signatory countries agree upon these laws and are obliged to act in accordance with them. The UN General Assembly has adopted a Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1945. There has been a vast change and development, and I'm going to highlight on that. The document set out for fundamental rights to be universally protected. Gradually, human rights have been expanded to include these rights specific to women, children, minorities, and other vulnerable groups. The Human Rights Council has been set up in 2006 as a key UN intergovernmental body responsible for protection of human rights. So this is the international. Then there are certain economic, social, and cultural rights. Certain rights are protected under the International Convention on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. This includes right to work in just and favorable condition, the right to social protection, to an adequate standard of living, to the highest attainable standard of physical and mental well-being, the right to education and enjoyment of benefit of cultural freedom and scientific progress. The other rights are civil and political rights, which is freedom of movement, equality before law, the right to fair trial and presumption of innocence, freedom of thought, conscience and religion, freedom of opinion and expression, peaceful assembly, freedom of association, participation in public affairs and elections. So these are the certain rights. Then arbitrary deprivation of life, torture, cruel or degrading treatment or punishment, slavery, forced labor, arbitrary arrest or detention, arbitrary interference with privacy, war propaganda, discrimination, advocacy of racial and religious hatred. So these are the certain international standard when I talked about. Now, what is this international rights, how it is coming in Indian jurisdiction? So in India, we have the Charter Constitution of India. In Constitution of India, the fundamental rights are covered under the Part 3, Article 12 to 35 of the Constitution. And these are guaranteed to all the citizens, irrespective of gender, caste, religion, or creed. So there are 6 primary rights which are enforceable by courts subject to certain conditions. These are the basic human rights. So first and foremost is equality. So Ramesh sitting in class 9 has the equality with Mohit or Antonio in the same class, and also with Ajita. So all are equal. Prohibits inequality on the basis of caste, religion, gender, place of birth, or race. I'm born in North India, but I cannot be discriminated if I go in South India. So that is completely prohibited. Untouchability is forbidden in any form. In the past, you might have studied, or you will be studying, that there was a lot of problems. The untouchability, that is also now forbidden in any form. Ensures equality of opportunity in matters of public employment and prevents the state from discriminating on the matter of employment. So everybody has an equal opportunity for matter of public employment. Now, right to freedom, which is the most crucial right. Today, I cannot just stop somebody and catch him and put him in my office and not allow him to go because he has a completely protection for his liberty. Even the police cannot just arrest anybody without the due process of law. So the protection of life and personal liberty, freedom of movement throughout the territory of the country, freedom of assembly, peacefully and without arms, then freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom to practice any profession or carry out any business or trade, right to education to available to all the children up to the age of 14. Now, freedom to form association is also part of the article 1922, the chapters. No one shall be prosecuted for the same offense more than once. That is also now double jeopardy is part of the constitution. Right to be defended by a legal practitioner. As Justice Ravindran said, this is the beautiful profession which is incorporated in the constitution. The right to be defended by a legal defender of choice. So everyone has a right to be defended by a lawyer, whomsoever he wants to select. Then right against exploitation. Sorry. Yes. The right condemns human trafficking, child labor, forced labor, making it offense punishable by law. In this constitution, these articles also prohibits any form of compelling a person to work without wages, where he was legally entitled not to work or to receive remuneration. You can't force anybody to work. And if you see that, you have to raise the wiggle. Then right to freedom of religion. This is also very valuable right enshrined in our constitution. I'm just briefly giving you, but forget about the articles, but these are the rights in this complete, the parent charter of the constitution, which governs the entire country's system. Grant religious freedom and ensure secular states in India. The constitution also says that a state should treat all the religion equally and impartially, and there is no state as an official religion. Then all people have the freedom of conscience and the right to preach, practice, and propagate any religion of their choice. Then the cultural and education rights are mentioned in Article 19, 20, 30. That protects the rights of cultural and linguistic minorities by enabling them to conserve their heritage and protecting them against discrimination. Minority, whether based on religion or language, have a right to establish and administer an educational institution. So minority interests are protected, that they can have their own institution and on the basis of language also. Then the right also ensures to go to Supreme Court of India, Article 32, a valuable right for enforcement of protection of violation of any fundamental rights. The Supreme Court has the jurisdiction to enforce the fundamental rights, even against private bodies, and in case of any violation, award compensation as well as affected to individuals. There are certain directive principles of the state policy. These principles are the guiding principles to the state of India for governing the state of India, not enforceable by any court in India. The principle includes direction for the state to ensure welfare of people, minimize inequalities in status and facilities, ensure that basic necessities of all citizens are met, and so on. So these are the rights which I wanted to share. But let me tell you, what is the role of a person today, completely ignorant about the outside world, what is happening around us. And we can, if we see a violation happen outside our school, will we stop? Do we not take any action? We need to protect, we need to act for those people, not only for myself, but also for my co-students, my classmates. But as I said, that these are the rights, but you also have duties. As Justice Ravindran has talked about, that there are many issues that the students just completely ignores. The youth completely ignores that in a casual manner, something is recorded on a mobile phone and circulated to anyone, without knowing that the circulation may affect someone's privacy rights, may also affect the mental, may create a mental and trauma to a person. In a fun, a video has been created, but when it's circulated and it humiliates the other person, it causes a lot of damage to the person. So we need to respect the privacy and also respect the rights which is given to the person under the Constitution of India. So these are the basic things which I wanted to talk. But let me tell you one thing, the journey from a school to come into any profession, as you have seen in the Constitution, that you have any right, you have right to choose any profession, business or trade. That journey is not easy unless and until you are focused on your goal, and unless and until you are focused and works towards to achieve the goal. If you don't dream, if you don't work upon to achieve those dreams, you will not be able to secure that and achieve what you have thought about. Your parents are working toward for your welfare for education, but entire responsibility of yours that you work hard. in disciplined manner. In a disciplined manner, study well and perform well in your studies. Besides this, you also have a role towards the society, that you will also be helping to poor. If possible, you will be doing justice by helping somebody who is helpless. As a lawyer, when I came into the profession, I realized that what I'm getting it from the society, it is my responsibility to give it to society as well, to defend the people, defend the innocent, defend the people who have been victim of torture or victim by exploitation without charging any fees. That is the passion, and then I realized that yes, the responsibility towards society, because the society is making you today. Whatever I have become today, whatever is the success given in profession, it is because of the society, it is because of the love and affection of all of you. And that's why, and we feel that we should also go back to the society. That is our responsibility. And with these words, I say that do well in your exams, study, and you achieve your goals, what you have set in your life. And many of you may be becoming lawyer, and it will be an honor to welcome you in the profession. And the CG3 is always there to help you, guide you. And as Pillai sir has said, that if you have any queries and questions, you can raise it to the principal, to the CG3. And with these words, I am thankful to Justice Ravindran, Mr. Pillai sir, and the team of CG3 for giving me opportunity in sharing my few words. I didn't want it to be making a legal lecture, but just wanted to share the stories I can talk on, but with the limitation of time, I'm pausing my words here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing such enlightening and extremely informative session from your expert. So now it is time for us to have a little interactive Q&A session. So all the students who wish to ask a question, raise a query, or even share a thought, you can unmute your mic and you can ask yourself, or you can also put the questions in the chat box and one of us will be reading it out for you. So who has the first question?
May I?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. So, sir, I just want to ask you about the writ jurisdiction of the Kerala High Court.
My dear son, tell your name also.
Sir, my name is Mufid Ibrahim.
Thank you. Okay, proceed.
So the question is, I want to know about the writ jurisdiction of Kerala High Court.
Sir, Justice Ravindran sir will be able to.
Both of us can answer. Mr. Ajay Verma can also answer. The writ jurisdiction is, no, I'll tell you, the writ jurisdiction is where ordinarily in a dispute between Mr. Ibrahim and Ms. Gayatri, a writ jurisdiction will not lie. You have to go to the ordinary civil or criminal court. Writ jurisdiction is where you attack a government's order or a decision or a law or an action of the government or instrumentalities of the agencies of the government. So that writ is where you seek to enforce your fundamental right or any other right. In the High Court, in the Supreme Court, a writ will lie only if the question involved is one relating to your fundamental rights, protection or enforcement of your fundamental rights. In the High Court, it is much wider. You can file a writ petition. Suppose somebody is in illegal confinement. Suppose I take away Mr. Kailas Nathapillai and keep him in custody. You would have all heard of habeas corpus cases, no? That's the only instance where a writ will lie against a private citizen.
Yes, sir.
It will not be against a government or agencies. So the next friend or the parent or guardian or anyone interested in Mr. Pillai can file a writ petition under Article 226 for a habeas corpus, directing me to produce the body in court. It means produce the body in court means it's not the literal sense, to produce the person in court. So that is one writ jurisdiction where Mr. Mufid Ibrahim can always file a writ petition to, if somebody of one of his close friends or relatives or somebody in whom he is interested is in illegal custody. That is one writ jurisdiction. Now, suppose you are a government servant. The government takes disciplinary action against you. Ultimately, you come to the High Court and file a writ petition challenging the order of the disciplinary authority. You are in service, in the government service. You are a college lecturer. There is a dispute about your seniority. That also ultimately ends up in the High Court. There are so many things. You can't describe it in one session. For that, your bare minimum understanding is you go to the High Court with a writ petition to enforce your fundamental rights or any other similar any other enforce your rights or any other rights between the government and the citizen or the governmental agencies and the citizen. The only exception being a writ of habeas corpus where a private citizen can also be asked to comply, a writ will issue against a private citizen also. True, in a dispute, there may be other private individuals involved, but the writ is against the government's action or the action of a public authority. I'll put it like that, public authority. Now, Krishna Pillai can also elaborate.
And can you just expand on writs involving public interest litigation?
Public interest litigation is where, on account of their standing in society or other extenuating circumstances, the persons really aggrieved are not in a position to go to court, like bonded labor. They were not in a position to even earn their living, to even meet their family. They could not even go to court. So that was conceived by it was any person can take up their cause. That is the interest. That is what public interest litigation is really about. Suppose somebody in Kerala standards, going by Kerala standards, the present situation in Kerala, I don't think such a situation is there. But this happened in the north. Where during those times, there were Bhagalpur blightings, bonded labor, those things are all there. That is how the public interest litigation evolved, where on account of their financial or social or other standing, the persons who are really aggrieved are not in a position to go to the court, then a public interest petition will lie. Now it's being misused. Everything is public interest litigation. Some government passes a law, public interest litigation. Somebody files takes an executive decision, public interest litigation. Something happens, public interest litigation. That was not really what it was intended for. It is to prevent abuse of the fundamental rights of the weaker sections of the society who are not in a position to go to court directly, that this was conceived. Now everything is conceived. Pegasus, public interest litigation. Nobody even knows. And they go to the highest court. That's the irony of it. It should start at the lowest court. Once you are a lawyer, you will be taught, always go to the lowest forum. Go to the police and file a complaint. If the police don't take action, go to the next magistrate court nearest. File a complaint there. If the magistrate doesn't take action, go to the High Court and then to the Supreme Court. Nowadays, what is being done is Pegasus, everybody rushes to the Supreme Court as if that's the only court in the country. There are avenues where a lawyer will tell you what to do. This is nothing but publicity seeking litigation. What is now happening in majority of the cases, I am not ridiculing the public interest litigation system, but it has come to that. Like what happened in Kerala, Lakshadweep, immediately people go and file public interest. What is really happening, nobody knows. Yes, I am not justifying what was done in Lakshadweep and all that. No, that's a different cup of tea altogether. But this is what is happening today under the color of public interest litigation is knee-jerk reaction. People want to be seen and heard, especially the political leaders. They want their voices to be heard, their faces to be seen on TV screens. So they immediately do something about it. And the social media is full of that. And abusive language also. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Who is the next?
Sir, my name is Aditya Rajesh.
Yes.
Sir, I have two questions in particular. So first is, Sir, Justice Ravindran, litigation to be filed, litigation and filing litigation and seeking legal services. Sir, I would like to approach my question. I've chosen a medical profession for myself, so I would like to approach my question in a way, in that way. Sir, like when we talk about medical, many people are like not really financially stable to access the medical facilities in India, due to which our government introduced many schemes like National Health Assurance Mission to provide free treatment. Sir, like it's found that many litigations are not filed because of the financial burden or financial strangulation involved. So filing litigation is not always very easy and very straightforward, right, sir? How would you like to comment on that, sir?
Yeah, litigation. Generally, by and large in Kerala, I am not referring to Delhi standards. Litigation is not expensive in Kerala.
Yes.
Lawyers are not paid fancy and fabulous fees. No. Delhi is a different cup of tea. Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai, you will simply faint if you hear the fee that a senior lawyer of the Supreme Court or the senior lawyer charges per appearance. That's not for the case. Forget that. By and large, litigation is not expensive. In the sense, uh, no lawyer in Kerala. You are now confined to Kerala. No lawyer in Kerala is avaricious. I don't say that. That's been my general impression. There are, as I said in the beginning, there are bad apples in every society. There are bad doctors, there are bad lawyers, bad engineers, people who don't construct houses properly, doctors who are negligent in their duties, lawyers who are negligent, who are avaricious, who are greedy. So those things apart. It's not a litigation, it's not an expensive business. If you know what to do, that's why I said you must have a bare minimum knowledge of your rights. Without seeing the prospectus, how do you go to a lawyer? You are denied admission in a medical college. You must have the prospectus with you. It's not the lawyer's duty to have the prospectus with him. You must have the prospectus with you. Go through it yourself. Find out what causes problem to you. Then go to the lawyer and tell him these are the facts. This is how I am aggrieved. Then he will tell you a way out. Litigation, I don't think is expensive. Now you come to the court fee aspect of it. The court fee aspect is in Kerala. If it's a money suit, you have to pay nearly 1/10 of the amount involved towards court fee. That's not the lawyer's fault. It's a fault of the government. It's a revenue source of revenue for the state. And the state is not willing to give it up, especially in Kerala. In Mumbai, there is a cap. In Bombay, there is a cap of 15,000 rupees on the court fee that you pay. Even if it is a 100 crore suit, the court fee that you pay is only 15,000 rupees. But in Kerala, it is 1/10 of that. 1/10 of 100 crore. If somebody owes you 100 crore, you have to file a suit in the subcourt, you will pay 1/10 of that as court fee. So litigation expenses, the court fee is the major component. And then of course, there are expenses attached to litigation. Apart from the lawyer's fee, you have to meet the other expenses also. You may have to frequently travel, go to Cochin, stay there in a hotel. Those things are there, ancillary. It's like getting admitted in a hospital. The bystanders expenses are there. But then one is life-saving, the other is not life-saving to the common man. No, a litigation is also many a time a life-saving device. I'm not encouraging people to be litigious. Try to get rid of all these things by mediation and conciliation. And then you have got the Legal Service Authority. If somebody cannot afford a lawyer, the Kerala State Legal Service Authority will get you a lawyer. It is there in every state, even in the Supreme Court, there is a Legal Services Authority. They will find you ways and means of getting the best of talents. And the senior lawyers in the Supreme Court do pro bono work. Mr. Kailas Natha Pillai does it. I have been here only for 3 years. Most of the lawyers do pro bono work. Even the top lawyers, I don't want to name them. It will be grossly improper to name them. When they do pro bono work, they find time to do pro bono work. Yes.
Okay.
So, hello.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've always had this doubt when I've seen news. Like there are certain cases where
Your good name?
Nanda.
No. Okay, Nanda.
Nanda.
Proceed.
There are cases where like that they show that someone has invaded the house. That has asked to has invaded the house and then in self-defense has been attacked, which and then the person who's defending themselves have been stuck in legal issues. So how is that, like, how, till what point are you allowed to defend yourself?
Mr. Nanda, your question was a little vague, but still we'll formulate it. You want to say if a person is put in a situation like which you have described, what is to be done? This is the question.
Yeah.
See, that is what His Lordship Justice Ravindran was telling us. You can approach law, but first you try to understand what is your problem. Then you
No, not like that. like if I say like if a robber comes into my house, till what point am I allowed to defend myself?
Suppose if he attacks you, you can even kill him under law. Section 100 of the Indian Penal Code says that in self-defense, private defense, you can you can murder a person. You suppose the robber comes with weapons and attacks you and your family members, you have to defend them. You can
So-
go to the extent of
Yes, sir. One thing, one caution. There is something known as whether you have exceeded the right of self-defense. That will be the question that will be decided.
subject to that.
Subject to that. And last opportunity also is that those things arise. No, I didn't get your question.
Sir, he was asking whether if a robber comes to your house,
Oh, yeah.
then what
You
are
you can always take preventive measures. And if he attacks you, as Mr. Pillai said, right of self-defense is there. That is not for a lawyer or not for a robber, even for any person on the, suppose you are attacked on the street. The question is, who is the aggressor? Who had the opportunity to avoid the aggression? And whether you had exceeded your right of self-defense. Those things come into play. Then you get into tricky areas.
Okay. Next question.
Sir, hello.
Yes.
Sir, my name is Samar Mohammed, and my question is, despite India being a secular country, why do we not have uniform civil code?
Whom do you want to answer your question? Mr. Samir.
Sir, Mr. Pillai.
See,
Thanks for diverting the question to Mr. Pillai.
Constitution Article 14 stipulates, it's one of the directive principles, that there should be a uniform civil code. We have to strive to have a uniform civil code. See, civil laws are largely personal, individual-centric, person-centric. It is not that easy to have a uniform civil code because it is a plural society we have. And if you say that there should be a uniform civil code, that can be a good pious wish, that is all. Because we have different communities, people having different family arrangements, personal laws. So having a uniform civil code, only test we can aspire for is that the law, even if it is different, must answer to the requirements of the Constitution of India. It must be constitution, subject to constitution. But there are efforts, even the Supreme Court, you may be knowing, a couple of years back, the Supreme Court of India asked the government, why are you not striving to achieve a uniform civil code? But that is what you call, it is a Pandora's box. You have to wait. And I don't think that that is that easily feasible. I will tell you one example. Even among one community, you take, for example, Hindus. The personal law applied to Hindus, that itself is not a uniform one. Different places, different states, different regions, different laws are there. Therefore, the aspiration is good, but achievement is difficult. This is my practical, realistic assessment, Mr. Samir. Okay. The next question.
So, Aditya Rajesh again.
Yes.
Sir, in 2018, in Supreme Court, including former Chief Justice Ranjan Gogoi, sir, in a press conference, they voiced their serious dissatisfaction of the way our legal institution was functioning, as in terms of backlog of cases and the number of judges and the legal authorities we have. Sir, in the 2017 survey, it was recorded that around 1,63,36,760 cases were pending in all the three codes, lower, higher courts. Sir, how would you like to comment on that? Ravindran sir, your vast experience as a justice.
I was waiting for that question. Can you think of any government office where all the files are disposed of? Just say yes or no.
No, sir. But
no.
No, sir.
No. Suppose I am the Taluk rationing officer, Taluk supply officer. There will be hundreds of applications for ration cards, no? Can you think of a clean slate in that office? Some applications will be defective. Some will be false and fraudulent claims. Some applications may have legal repercussions in that. There may be some dispute about rights of persons involved. So the rationing inspector or the taluk supply officer will not be able to dispose of all the applications that are before him. Some will be pending. Take the passport office. Do you mean to say all the passport applications till date have been disposed of? Some are pending because of various legal issues. Some people may have a criminal case against them. Those cases, the passport cannot be issued. Then why single out the judiciary alone for the pendency? What is the population of India? 130? 5 crores? How many cases are pending? 3 crores?
Sir, 1 crore, 60
1
lakhs.
crore. Let's take it as 3 crores. What's the
Sir, I
percentage?
would like to add a point,
One minute,
sir.
I am coming to it. Now, what about the disposals? Oh, everyday cases are being filed. Those things are not taken into account. And judges work, lawyers work, and about adjournment. It's the most abused story. A judge does not adjourn all cases and walk away. No. Suppose there are 20 cases. Today, I've been waiting for a case in the Supreme Court for the last 1 month. It has not been taken up. The judges are working till 4 o'clock. And it's a taxing job. A physical labor alone does not drain you. Your brain also gets drained out. You will not be able to think correctly once beyond a particular time. You get jaded. Your brain will not function properly. You will not be able to correctly decide. No, as a judge, I have handled up to 375 cases a day. And you are blaming the High Court for not working. 375 cases. It takes 1 minute for a case to be called and to go out of my hands. By 4 o'clock, 4:30, we finish all the cases. True, there are some people who are slow, that's all. But then no judge adjourns cases and walks away. He takes up the next case and decides. Suppose there are 10 cases listed before a judge today. All the 10 cases, the lawyers may not be ready. Now, in one case where Mr. Pillai and I are appearing against each other in the Supreme Court today. 3 weeks back, the client for whom I am appearing passed away. That case cannot be decided today. It will have to be adjourned. Because if it is decided against my client, it's a state, he having died, it's a void judgment. It will not bind his legal heirs who are not on the party array. So cases get adjourned for a variety of reasons. And our glorified civil society, they have ways and means of evading summons, service of summons. I am P.N. Ravindran. A notice comes to me by saying P.N. R.A.V.I.N. D.R.A.N. is my official name. As in today's notice, if it is typed as P.N. R.A.V.E.N. D.R.A.N., if I am the defendant in a suit, I will say the name differs and I refuse to accept summons. That is one reason for pendency. The tendency of the glorified Indian citizenry to avoid service of summons is one reason for delay. The second is they don't do the duty in time. You can't blame the lawyer. The defendant will not file his return statement. The law is you have to file it within, I think now it is 2 months. Is it not so, Mr. Ajay Verma? 90 days. You have to file your return statement of defense. Suppose I file a suit against Kailasanath Pillai for 10,000 rupees. Summons is served on him. He has to file his return statement within 90 days. He doesn't do it. What should the judge do? Throw out the case or decide it against Mr. Pillai? So he gives him some more time. If the trial judge doesn't give it, Mr. Pillai goes to the High Court. The High Court doesn't do it, he goes to the Supreme Court. Those things take time. Like that, every day there are hundreds of cases, civil cases, criminal cases, it is still worse. If there are 20 accused, 5 of them will be absconding. And we have got old laws. Those laws are not being changed. And in criminal cases, we have a funny system where you are presumed to be innocent until proven guilty. And so they adopt dilatory tactics. So those things are there. It's not the system's fault. It is the combined effect of all the conduct of some lawyers are also take time. They take unnecessarily time, but then that is a very minuscule percentage. The tendency of human beings to avert a decision is a reason for delay, according to me. They somehow want to get it delayed. If money is involved, the person who is liable to repay it wants it to be delayed because he can invest. He can go on investing the money in his business. I owe Mr. Pillai 10 lakh rupees. If I need not repay him in 10, 20 years because I'll be investing this money as my capital in my business. At the end of the day, it is cheaper for me to pay him 10 lakhs with interest at 12%. That is also a reason for the delay. So that don't blame the system. Try to be less litigious. Yes, that is my answer to it.
Who is the next?
And then lack of infrastructure is also there. Don't look at the Kerala High Court and think that the situation is rosy in the trial court. Judges are working in adverse conditions. They don't have the proper number of staff. And the government of the day is involved. Government of the day, whenever in power, they don't give the courts the sanctions required number of staff. It is not like writing letters. A secretary to government has 2 stenographers. So the High Court judges also have 2. But a secretary to government does not write long judgments running into several pages. They write letters, 1-page order, 2-page order, that's all. But a judge's stenographer, even interim orders run into occasionally 20, 30, 50 pages. Yes.
Okay, next question.
Sir, it's me again.
Yes, please.
Sir, this is more of a personal question, but as a High Court judge, what stops you from taking part in corruption, bribery, etc.?
As a High Court judge, what?
What stops you from taking part in corruption and bribery?
Bribery. It all depends on the character of the individual. If you are morally corrupt, anybody will take a bribe, even in private sector. Bribe is not something unique to the public sector only. There are employees in the private sector who take money, who are not satisfied with what they get. I wound up my initial talk by saying, if you are born and brought up in a good family, family imparts values to you, then you will neither be corrupt nor dishonest. It all depends on the way you are brought up. Upbringing counts a lot. And then, if you are contented with what you get, then don't go to, there are unverified stories of lawyers collecting money for payment of bribe to the government pleader, public prosecutor, judges. Those things happen in every society. Yes. There are people who act as intermediary agents. That's why I said at the beginning, you must have primary education, and the man who gives the bribe is also equally guilty. So long as there are persons to pay, there will be persons to take. Unless there is a giver, there will be no taker. So if this whole of India improves, the glorified civil society sets high standard for itself. The administrators will not be corrupt because you don't want anything out of the way. It is only where somebody wants something done out of the way that the person who does the favor asks for money. I'm against it. I'm not saying it should be encouraged and all that. But so long as there are givers, there will be takers. If there are no beggars on the street, you will not be doling out alms, no? If all are well off, there will be no beggars, nobody will be giving alms. You may still help each other by passing on presents, gifts, everything like that. But I would say the bribery is there because the glorified civil society is greedy. They want things done out of turn. They want things beyond their entitlement. And if there are 1,000 citizens like that, out of 10 judges, one may fall prey to that. That is all. I'm only just giving an example. I'm not saying 1/10 of the judges are corrupt and all that. I'm only giving an illustration, an example. Occasionally these things happen, but by and large, we have a very good judiciary. And it's not money alone that counts. So parental upbringing, the way you are born and brought up, your character, these things count a lot. Yes, I think I made myself clear. So long as there are givers, there will be takers.
Okay.
So don't give bribe.
Okay, sir.
Be satisfied with what you get.
Okay, sir.
Yes.
Who will ask the last question of the session?
Myself, Rebecca. Can I ask the question?
Yes, yes. This will be the last question.
Yeah. So girls who pass 12th exams cannot attend the NDA test. Is it gender inequality?
Whom do you like to answer the question?
Anyone, sir. I just want the answer to the
Ajay
question.
Verma Mr. Ajay Verma can give the answer. Something is happening in the Supreme Court.
See, according to me, if you ask my personal opinion, it is discriminatory when the Supreme Court has said that the women cannot be deprived of the post in army permanent commission. That judgment has already come, and therefore, yes, if a person like you who come up forward and would like to challenge this, definitely the Supreme Court will intervene in this matter. And latest development is happening. As you know, that there was a short service commission, then there was a permanent commission discrimination happening. The Supreme Court has set aside that restrictions. Now the women are also entitled for that. But the feeder cadre like NDA is the prime because that is the most officers are starting from NDA and then they goes for journals till journal posts. So therefore there should be the opportunity to women to participate in that process. That's my view.
But there is another aspect to it. Should they be on the fighting front? That's a question. Not that they are not because they are weak, but should women be subjected to that?
Sir, in my opinion, there are very good commandos. I have seen female officers.
There are very good commandos, but on the battlefront. I am not saying commando action, but on
no, sir, not commander in the battlefront. I have got the training from the female commander in Dutch army, and also, sir, in my great respect, in my view, that they are also not lesser than the male in the fighting front also.
Not because they are weak, but because we have a soft corner for women. So should they be forced to fight fight a war? Not because they are weak, but we respect women. Should we sacrifice their lives for the nation? There are men to do that. Men are dying also on the battlefield. I am not saying women are a weak sex. No, nothing. We have got women astronauts, women pilots, women fighters, everything. Fighter aircraft, people are flying. But on the battlefront, I mean in the Indian Army, not the Navy or the Air Force. In Siachen Glacier, it would be grossly inhuman, according to me personally, to post a lady officer and ask her to face bullets every day from across the border. Not because she is weak, no, but out of special regard for women. And dangerous. It's a dangerous job. Why subject them to that cruelty? Not that they are weak emotionally or physically, no. They are, as you said, there are commandos. Anyway, it's a vexed question. People will have to think about it. And one reason is in the maintenance of the family. If all the women are there on the battlefield, the human race will cease to exist. Sir, it's a law of nature. We can't wish it away. And in all our families, we respect women. We don't subject them to the other, what is that, except in some communities. Women are treated with respect. We don't subject them to make them undergo physical labor or do work. They are taken care of. Kid glove treatment. I am not saying that should be continued. No, they should come up in every aspect of human endeavor. But the question still remains, should they be on the battlefield? Yeah, let's see. That's a moot question. Not because they are weak or they may not be good soldiers and all that. No, they are equally strong as men, if not better. And for your information, they have more tolerance. Their tolerance levels are high than men, both mentally and physically. They're pain tolerant. They can bear more pain than men, both physically and emotionally. So, but then the moot question is, India Commission and all that is fine, but soldier, I mean the soldier on the battlefield.
Sir, so sorry to add, but I have to say, I see a deep-rooted patriarchy in your answer.
No, not paternity.
Patriarchy,
it is there. You can't simply wish it away. Would you like your mother to fight a battle? No, I won't like my mother to fight a battle. I would prefer my father does it. Not
Sir,
because my mother is weak. Soldiering aspect. I am saying on the battlefront, the front line soldier.
Sir, can I add a point?
Yeah.
So it's a woman's decision whether she wants to fight in the battlefield or not.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
That's it.
no one
That's
can
it.
make a decision for her.
No, fine, good. But then what happens?
The question is,
Then the other questions arise. A man shoots and kills a woman. The soldier from the other side will be a man. He kills a woman. He'll be doing something more gruesome than killing a male. Because women are they are the light of our life. Amma, Sondam Amma. Would you like to shower abuses on your mother? No. You may shout at your father, but mother, certainly no. I am not saying shouting at the father is good. No. Mother deserves more respect. She is goddess personified. I'll stop with that.
okay,
I
sir.
don't want my goddess to die on the battlefield. Mr. Pillai, can I put it any better? No.
Yes, sir. That is,
No, I cannot put it any better. I don't want my sister or my mother or my wife or my daughter or my neighbor, for that matter, to die on the battlefield because they are goddesses according to me. You may call it what do you call patriarchal or paternal behavior or male chauvinistic, whatever it is. But I respect ladies so that I don't want to die on the battlefield.
Sir,
So what about men?
sir, without it.
We are used to that. Our mindset may be like that.
No, sir, without interrupting, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, the point that
I am saying my personal views. No, I am not saying you should accept it.
Yes, sir. But this point that should we send women to battlefront has been actually raised as an argument by the center in the affidavit that was filed before the Honorable Supreme Court. In that where Short Service Commission was granted to Navy officers, Navy lady officers.
Yeah, yes, it is all there. No, it happened in Mumbai. It happened in Mumbai. Women are denied certain employment. They are not permitted to work.
So no, the fact to be highlighted is this, that such submissions by the central government were actually criticized by the Supreme Court.
Yes.
And said it amounted to a gender stereotyping.
Yes, gender stereotyping.
As a subtle point.
No, it happened in Mumbai first. Women were not permitted to serve in bars.
No, sir, but in the US and other foreign countries.
I told in the beginning, in the US, they don't have a family system like us.
Right. Okay, sir.
In the US, you are dating. Will you permit your daughter to go date somebody in Kerala? No, nothing doing. We have a different culture.
Okay, I can.
Madam Sandhya Nair, will you permit, if you have a daughter 10 years down the line or 15 years down the line, will you permit your daughter to date somebody?
I don't think they will stop to and ask for
Nothing
permission.
doing. Simply imitating the Westerners is not culture. Family values have certain. The family values have certain basic understandings. Not that women is weak. For a family to get together, there must be some sort of civility among them, good decent behavior. I am not saying dating is a bad thing, no. But then our culture is something different. And don't hate the Americans. They are all convicts who were sent away from Europe, went to another country, conquered that land, and then established a nation. I don't consider them to be civilizationally superior to us Indians. All of them were bigots who were exiled who went away from England, escaped from the Commonwealth countries, from Europe, and set shop in USA after robbing the native Indians of their land. Yes, and don't hate them. They have right to bear arms. Do we have the right to bear arms? Do you want right to bear arms in India?
No, we don't.
So that is it. So our culture, civilization doesn't mean uprooting everything that our ancestors got, have established for us. We have our system is all right. Only thing is, occasionally there have been unpalatable events. Women were not given the due respect. But then always, Manusmriti is quoted out of context. Without reading the whole text, one word is taken out and Sri does not, Sri Swadhindra Mahadi, that is blown out of context. You read the whole thing. They occupy the pride of place in our homes. So that is something which, aping the Westerners, our liberals have to the
It was a wonderful.
Yes, that's it. I think we have exceeded the limits for time. I am free. I am free. I and Pillai have a case. We are going to get it urgent. Not because we don't want to argue it, but because of extenuating circumstances beyond our control.
Anyway, sir, we had a very wonderful question answer session. Interactive session was very good, and Greets Public School has risen to its standard, asking questions without mincing words. I congratulate all who participated, and I congratulate the teachers and other students who morally support this equation drawn by the students who have asked questions. If the chance permits, we will meet again our students, CG3. Now, I think that Gayatri, we can announce the next program.
Sure, sir. So as we have come to the end of the session, let me invite a young and vibrant member of CT3, Ms. Radhika Sudhir, a student of Symbiosis Law School, Pune, who will share with us her thoughts on choosing the legal profession and also to deliver the vote of thanks. Over to you, Radhika.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. I'm Radhika Sudhir. I'm a third-year BA LLB student from Symbiosis Law School, Pune. So the first reason for me to pursue law as a career is definitely because I have seen my father work and interact with clients, and I have seen the working style very closely. So he is my inspiration to take up this subject. But apart from that, another main reason is that law forced me to be aware of my surroundings. It made me realize the importance of my actions and my words, and how it is interlinked with my daily life activities. Also, the subject is so vast, it gives a lot of different options to focus on, such as science, medicine related matters, business or civil or criminal related matters, and many more, opening doors to a lot of opportunities. It challenged me to host a set of important skills, such as critical analysis, lateral thinking, research, and public speaking. And this is a profession which caters to constant growth. And with these added benefits, it's definitely a very promising profession. And by saying this, let me discharge the duty vested upon me, that is to propose the vote of thanks. Firstly, I would like to thank our chief guest, Justice P.N. Ravindran sir, for gracing the program with your presence and kind words of wisdom. Thank you, sir. And Advocate Ajay Verma sir, for your words of enlightenment, and Dr. Kailasnath Pillai sir, for opening the program and promoting such an imperative initiative. I would like to thank the faculty, members, students, and their parents of Greets Public School, especially Adrina Kamal Thomas for the beautiful prayer song, and Mary Ann Chaiju for the wonderful welcome speech. I would like to thank the principal and authorities for cooperating with us and supporting us to make our mission a successful endeavor. I would also like to thank our team CG3, and once again, I want to express my gratitude to everybody present here on behalf of our team. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Radhika. Radhika is a fourth generation lawyer.
Oh, best wishes.
Okay, she is the daughter of Virapangod Sudhir.
Pardon, Virapangod Sudhir? No, Sudhir's daughter. I never knew that.
Okay, sir, we have come to the close of our meeting, sir. Once again, CG3 expresses its gratitude and thanks to all who have participated and lended moral support. So I wish all success to this great institution, Greets Public School, and students and teachers and all who have participated. Once again, my personal thanks to all who have participated, except especially Justice P.N. Ravindran, Ajay, and all of this. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you. Thanks. All the best to everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Try to be a lawyer.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Of course, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye bye.
Thank you,
All the
sir.
best.
Thank you, sir.
Bye, sir. Bye.